Hey, Kriste Goad, welcome.
Hey, Michael, thanks.
Yeah, so glad you're here. So this is great. We're going to jump right in. This is an episode. We're going to talk about healthcare marketing.
Love it.
Yeah, super excited. So for everybody listening, so Kriste has Fuoco, and website is
Growwithfuoco.com.
growwithfuoco.com, and Fuoco is Italian for fire.
That's right.
And so, Kriste, tell us about yourself. And this takes us right into our first question today. You have an amazing brand and company. Can you tell us the why behind Fuoco? And Fuoco is Italian for fire.
Italian for fire. Yes, I am Italian on my mom's side. I have a very strong affinity for all things Italian. And so when I was looking for a name for my company several years ago, it just sort of it evolved. It wasn't something that I, had in mind. And then I'm like, oh, that's perfect. And I can be chief fire starter, which seems kind of fun. So that's it.
That's awesome. And so you have a digital marketing agency. You all do a lot of B2B, and I think your services lean in the direction of really heavy duty strategy and the hard questions, not
That's
the easy
right.
questions, but the hard questions. Is that right? What
That's right.
took you in that direction? Why did Fuoco become? Why did it emerge?
Fuoco emerged not because it was something that I ever really set out to do, have my own agency. I just, my career went from journalism to politics to in house for a healthcare company called Healthways a million years ago. It doesn't even exist anymore. But um, I got really deep into healthcare B2B during that time. And then I went to work for a couple different agencies. And then my last agency that I worked for was acquired. And so when I left there, I had a non compete for a little bit. And so I thought, well, maybe I should just set out on my own, and see how that goes. And so that's what I did. And I just was an independent consultant for really the first year. And, just through growth, it evolved from me working with other freelance consultants to starting an actual agency. And that's where it has gone. And healthcare is really, what I've been involved in for so long, over 20 years. And it just made sense for me to continue down that path and specifically healthcare B2B. So, Fuoco really grew out of that. And we do a combination of, we're an integrated marketing agency. So we do digital marketing, we do brand and messaging strategy, and we do a lot of PR, media relations. We love it when a client asks us to help them with all of those things, because when you are able to take an integrated approach and really leverage all channels and align all channels, that's when we see the most success.
Mm. Yeah, it seems in the healthcare space, one of our experiences, I'm curious to know if you think this is true. The more sophisticated the industry, something like healthcare, extremely complex, legislation issues, even Internet of Things, manufacturing, new products that are coming to market,
Yeah.
massive complexity around funding and hospital networks, that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
how did branding become sort of the one of the core pieces? Is that more of a, would you say that's kind of a home base for what you're doing, or is it more marketing strategy? What do you think is kind of the single point of focus in how you relate to your customers?
Yeah, I think from a branding perspective, while we have helped a lot of companies and clients go from, creating a brand from scratch. So everything from naming to visual identity, building a website, and then all the marketing, go to market plan and execution. We do all those things, but and we partner, we don't necessarily have in-house for every single thing. Just like really I've never run into any agency that has in-house talent for every single thing. But when you do this, and you live and breathe this business, who's good at what, and you go and you get, those partners. So that's what we do. But from a branding perspective, what I would say is that inevitably 9 times out of 10, what happens if someone comes to us looking for marketing or media relations or PR help, we inevitably find that we have to kind of take a step back and we have to work on messaging and positioning
Mm,
almost every time, because we're like, oh, okay, what's your messaging and positioning? Oh, well, actually, we really need to work on that. We have really evolved our brand or evolved who we are as a company. We've acquired different, other companies or capabilities, or they've built them from scratch. And so a lot of times what we find is you know, a client, what you can see in the web on the website or externally is not at all who they are today,
mm,
because there can always be a lag time. I mean, I look at sometimes even our own Fuoco website and I'm like, oh gosh, really need to update some things. But
yeah.
it's like kind of, you're so busy in the business and growing and developing new capabilities or merging or acquiring or whatever you're doing, that a lot of times, the business outpaces your public persona, your public brand,
Yeah.
your public facing assets. So I'm kind of going on and on about that, but that is really, when we think about brand, it almost always comes down to that.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of time, I feel like the pace of change in, recent years in particular, we're sitting here in, end of Q3, 2023, coming off of a few years of COVID, massive shifts in the economy. But some of what we're seeing is just the deck is just sort of constantly being reshuffled
Oh
now.
yeah. Yeah.
And so I think a lot of our clients, a lot of your clients, probably, everybody in Nashville who works in healthcare, there's a lot of sort of resetting and figuring out, okay, where do we go from here? So that kind
Hmm.
of takes me to my next question. Let's talk a little bit more about branding.
Yeah.
What's in B2B healthcare marketing? What's going on with branding? Because I feel like for a while there, it was easy to like spit out a brand that felt really coherent and unique and clever and cute and quirky, but didn't have any teeth. And then other brands are sort of drifting and they're changing and they're sort of more defined by what's happening around them and not sort of a strong, confident, clear, self-directed message. But what are you seeing? It's not our work though. We're more channel management and we're
Hmm.
we're a little bit of a step removed and downstream a little bit, I think, from a lot of the work that you do. And
Hmm.
so what's going on with branding right now? How important is it? And what's changing with B2B healthcare branding right now?
Yeah. Well, I do think our niche is really helping healthcare B2B brands tell their stories. And so much about branding is, what's the story you're telling, and are you talking about, we spend a lot of time, talking about like, are you just telling the market all about your products and, the features of your products, or are you actually telling them of the value that you're bringing? Are you helping educate the market and your buyers about how they should be thinking about marketing, branding, PR? How do you buy these? How do you decide who to work with to help do that? How do you decide which channels to use? How do you decide which tactics to use? It's those kinds of things. But I mean, honestly, I think that branding is more important than ever in B2B healthcare marketing, because there's just so much disruption and so many, like you said, so many new brands hitting the market seemingly every single
Hmm.
day. And the interesting part there is, a lot of times when you look at which brands, you know, it could be a brand new company that's got a lot of funding and they spend a lot of money on marketing. So they make a big splash.
Mm,
They've not gotten $1 of revenue and may never, but they get all kinds of press, or you see them everywhere and they're like, their brand is just so impressive. So in that instance, making a brand investment and doing it right out of the gate, if you can afford it, it can make a big difference, and you might get acquired within a year or 2 years, maybe with no revenue. um, so there's a lot of strength in brand in that way, in that regard. Most brands don't have that kind of money, at launch, but there's just there are so many, especially digital health. That market has cooled a lot in the past year in terms of
Hmm.
funding, but there's still a lot of funding available, and there's still a lot of new brands coming to market, new solutions coming to market. But the other thing about branding is all of this, and you kind of touched on it. It's like, and we kind of mentioned it earlier about extreme consolidation going on in healthcare. There's just a ton of mergers and acquisitions, and even the most established brands that you can think of in healthcare are in a position of needing to redefine their brand to the market because of what I talked about earlier, which is they have changed so much. They've acquired new companies, acquired new capabilities. They've pivoted on their vision, and a lot of pivots out of COVID. So their brand needs to catch up, and they really need to rethink and retell their story. And that's a huge ask, especially, we run into a lot of time with clients. It's as much as an inside job as an outside job because
Mm.
of all that, that you think about integrating a whole new company, or maybe your brand has just gone out and bought 4 new companies. There's a lot involved in that, and a lot involved in getting everybody on the same page, understanding what do you even offer.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about, when you rebrand or just even reposition, you really have to educate your internal audiences, your internal brand ambassadors, as much as your external. And that process in and of itself really helps get everybody on the same page.
Yeah, so there's some really good sound bites in there. I'm hearing a couple of big things. Not everyone's moved out of sales speak and into branding.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of sales content making its way. And I would say that resonates for us as well. Even just digital marketing channels, just trying to beat the us, me out of the headlines,
Yeah.
and get companies to think in terms of what's really the Donald Miller kind of story brand approach.
Yeah.
Who's
Yeah.
the hero of the story? Okay, well, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's not talk about us. Let's talk about them a little bit. But then
That's a lot
also,
harder. It's a lot harder.
yeah. Yeah, it is. It is harder. It's harder to get into that mindset and show up there and bring something of value to that conversation when you actually have to work harder to get yourself on that side of the table, not just, hey, we developed all this great software. Let me tell you about these features that you're never going to use, because
Right.
it's over engineered. Yeah. And the other big thing is, yeah, so much activity right now.
Mhm.
So many mergers and acquisitions. I feel that the entire industry is going through this upheaval, almost like remote work with commercial real estate. If a few people are doing it, they're more cost competitive. And so suddenly everybody has to go remote work if it's possible because they're under that cost pressure. Well, if you're a medical practice working independently and everybody else is run by some sort of streamlined healthcare roll up, suddenly you're at a disadvantage if you've just got one map pin and your nearest competitor has 50 and they're run by this big organization that's very streamlined. So yeah, that's a lot of rethinking and a lot of shifting that's happening in the marketplace right now.
100%. Yes.
Yeah, that's great. Well, okay, let's go to our next question. This maybe kind of dovetails. I'm just going to read this question. Is rich media, like video and podcasting, an essential ingredient or a nice to have for companies planning their marketing budgets for 2024? So as we kind of look to the future, we're in
Mhm.
kind of a chaotic environment. Everybody's getting reoriented to like a new economy, a different world, and then we're relating to each other a lot more with media, which I'm kind of tipping my hand a little bit there. But how's rich media factoring into branding right now for healthcare and for healthcare B2B?
Yeah, I think rich media is essential. It's an essential element in 2024 marketing budgets, especially video. Um, Love podcasts. This is a podcast. I have my own podcast. We try to get our clients as guests on podcasts. Love it. Now, I will say about podcasting, I do caution my clients sometimes not to pursue a podcast of their own unless they're serious about it, because it's a lot of work, and there's a pretty heavy lift on producing your own podcast. Whereas video, 100%. You just bring in a good video crew and have a good plan, and you can, create a lot of video content that then your marketing team can go make hay with, and it's not this, it's a different level of commitment. But what I would say is um, if you think about how you as an individual consume much of your information and your media, whether your personal or your professional life, video is a core component. And in some cases, it might be the only thing that some people pay much attention to. And I think B2B, from my perspective, is no different in that regard, because B2B decision makers, they're human first, so most of
Mm,
the time with video and audio podcast, you can really communicate a lot of information and a lot of emotion a lot faster, in a video. I think video content is eminently more shareable than, say, a white paper. Now, I love a great white paper. I love thought leadership, but I always advise my clients, hey, if we're going to take the time and spend the money to do a white paper, let's consider all the different ways that we can then market that, right? So how do you turn this big, meaty thought leadership content, like a white paper, like a survey, like a research report, into chunks of content, short form and long form video? On the PR front, I'd say we also see a lot of really good engagement on a multimedia press release.
hmm.
That's a great place for video as well. We just did a video shoot with a client yesterday. They're rolling out a brand new brand. Speaking of brand, and so it's a new website, everything, and we're doing a press release. We're like, and then we did some media training, which led to, hey, what about a video, with our CEO being able to explain to their current customers, oh, who's this new client, who's this new brand, what does it all mean, as well as to leverage that as part of a multimedia press release about the new brand. So that's just like a real world and in the moment example of video. And I just think the key is really omni-channel, multimedia, and to plan for how you're going to create that kind of content on a quarterly basis, and how you're going to incorporate it into everything from thought leadership to big press announcements to branding, social media, product demos. There's just so many great applications.
Yeah, video is not going away. It's just going to be bigger and bigger,
Yeah.
and it's coming on strong. And I think you said something really big there. Planning ahead, and it's part of that sort of in it to win it, or committed to the course of action. But one of the things we talk a lot about is not just producing the content, but having a robust publishing strategy. It
Mhm.
sounds like you're thinking about that too. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. One thing that I think a lot of people don't think about, and it's sometimes hard to convince clients to invest in this, but with social media, if you're going to invest in social media, video should be a big part of that. So if you're planning to gather video content on a quarterly basis and you're setting aside time to do that, it's going to happen. Then your partner or your internal team, whoever's executing, or a lot of times the combination thereof, can plan out what that content should be. Throughout the quarter, you're going to have different ideas, new things are going to come up. But if you can plan that, set aside time, gather new content, video content in that way, and then you can leverage it across all your channels. But social media, a lot of times I think it's an afterthought in terms of video, and
Hmm.
or people just think of it like they might think of their personal social media account and like, video. So yeah, planning is really key.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a really good kind of takeaway from today is better planning is going to result in not just better content, but just more reach. It's going to significantly increase. If you're thinking about the social media clip is like, oh, maybe we can go recycle something. Well, that was your opportunity. That was the moment that someone was paying attention and ready to take something in. And if it's not the best it could have been, that's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's good. So, there's a lot of change, a lot of things, with remote work and, a lot of shift toward more media. There's a lot of change in kind of the tools that we're using. So, are there any tools or any ideas that kind of have you excited these days? Any that you're using that you can't believe you didn't have a year ago, that sort of thing?
I can tell you from yeah, from an internal people and project management, kind of tool is we are using Monday.com, which is not a platform we were using this time last year. We really tried to stick with the platform we were on, but it just wasn't working for us. And we're like,
Mm.
okay, we need something more intuitive, easier to navigate, easier to use, easier for everybody to know what should they be working on when. It seems like that should just be, as a business, you don't actually just automatically know that. Everyone's not exactly aware of what they should be working on. So Monday.com, we started using just a few months ago, and it has really been a game changer for us in terms of managing all the different projects for clients, managing projects for our own agency. We use it for managing business as much as we manage, the work itself, and having a line of sight on people's priorities. As an agency, you're constantly trying to understand what our capacity is. Are people overbooked, underbooked? A lot of times you run into, like, you have several clients with competing, projects that are
Mm.
overlapping, on delivery, but you still have the same team, delivering. And so you can't be 5 places at once. So it really helps us have a line of sight on that and be able to, kind of look around the corner and make sure that we're planning and scheduling and setting expectations appropriately, both, with our team as well as with our clients.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think there are going to be more tools. AI is kind of the big thing that's kind of coming, and I think a lot of times, we're probably over the next few years going to have to negotiate where we want it, where we don't want it. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, that
AI,
sort of
we've
thing.
we've definitely been, like everyone, experimenting, with Chat GPT and leveraging it and really trying to understand what it's good at and not good at, what it's good to use it for and not. So we definitely have been experimenting with that as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's also. I mean, I wouldn't say brand new. AI as a kind of an idea has been around for years, but this predictive language model that just kind of repeats everything on the internet up to the year 2020 or whatever. It's like, okay, I get it. But yeah, it's not turning out to be the sort of I don't know, magic for a lot of things. There's still a lot of work required for a lot
Right.
of activities. Yeah. Well,
Sky,
good.
the sky is not falling yet.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, and I argue that it's not an SEO killer. We do a lot of SEO work. I say it's not an SEO killer; it's a search engine killer. But when I go to Bing and I use it, I'm like, okay, I just want search results right now, and I don't like this. So there's some, kind of user habits. Like search engines have been around for 20 years. There's a pretty good concept.
Yeah.
Not sure that we should ditch that right away, but yeah, we'll see how it all shakes out. Okay, next up, we kind of touched on this earlier, but I'm curious to know your thoughts on thought leadership. So, my question is thought leadership still a goal for companies that want to market their services? So, yeah, what do you think? Even the phrase leadership feels kind of
Oh,
uncomfortable to say, but
it
I can't point.
does.
I can't point to anything we're doing that isn't about building thought leadership.
I know. I absolutely love thought leadership. And oddly, as long as I've been doing this, it has been a difficult and elusive thing to describe to people who don't inherently understand what thought leadership is. I've been I've
Hmm.
been I've been explaining thought leadership for as long as I've been involved in thought leadership. And I think, it's one of those things that I have found it's almost impossible to convince a client that doesn't understand thought leadership already to, like, do it uh,
Interesting.
under that moniker. But then the clients where, their internal teams and their leadership, that they understand it, that's when it's really fun, because they know they want it. They know maybe they already have it. They want to do more of it. That's when it's really fun. I think, absolutely, like, thought leadership is a goal for companies that want to market their services. If it's not, it should be.
Yeah.
I
So,
hesitate
okay.
to use the word should, but
Yeah. So not going away, but how would you say it's different than, maybe a decade ago when thought leadership was kind of a new idea. But how would you say it's kind of different, even going into 2024? Like, what does thought leadership for your types of customers look like? People who are clients
Mhm.
of Fuoco, what are they? What's their appetite right now for new ideas and new insights? What are they thinking about, and what are you recommending to them for next year?
Um, so like when I think about thought leadership, I think, it's really about really giving a lot of consideration and deep consideration to how people buy. How do your customers buy? Whether direct to consumer, whether B2B, they Google or Bing or whatever search engine they use, they Google, which is now a verb. They ask friends, they ask family, they ask trusted networks, and they look for value. And so I think thought leadership
Mm.
drives all of those. I think thought leadership drives brand awareness. I think it drives differentiation. I think it drives, again, that internal cohesion that I mentioned earlier. Like if you're a company and you're like, okay, we're going to put a stake in the ground, thought leadership. Let's just say I want you to buy my AI solution for physician practices. Okay, well, let's dig deep and say, well, what is it actually doing? It goes back to that brand storytelling and like, what is the big challenge that it's solving, and how is my AI solution for doctors' practices, different? What's it going to do? What problem is it going to solve? And now let's create a whole educational subject matter expert campaign around that. And it's going to help, your internal teams know how to talk about it. It's going to help know how to talk about it to the market. And then if you do it well, it's going to define how people shop for that solution,
Hmm.
right? So I think it gives marketing PR teams something to build campaigns around. It drives content. It can feed the marketing machine for multiple months, if not multiple years. I think like if you're some if you're an organization with really heavy hitter subject matter experts, it's a great way to feature that expertise and set your brand apart. And all of that combined, wait for it, I'm going to your SEO. It really fuels SEO and search rankings, right? And
Yes.
it's driving, traffic to your site, to your app, to whatever. And I think, if your brand is leading the way on helping buyers know what to look for when they're in need for that solution or that product and that you're selling, then you're going to move way up to the top of their list, both search as well as preference, and I think if they're then priced right, good thought leadership can help you overcome pricing issues. If you're the most expensive, but people view you as the true thought leader and the expert, that can help you get that that higher price a lot of times too, I think. And then and even more bonus if you're somewhere in the middle, you're not the lowest price, the highest price, but like you're a great price point, and then your thought leadership drives home with your buyer that you're also a good value, then you hit it out of the park with that.
Yeah, you said something I hadn't ever heard before. People are looking for value. And I think a lot of times with any kind of content, or especially when people are trying to do marketing stuff and they're not used to talking in a marketing way, they think they need to talk in a sales way. But,
Mm-hmm.
and they're often too close to what they're doing and need an agency to help them take a step back and say, wait a second, at the end of the day, what does this really do for anybody? They're looking for value, either in search engines with a pain point, or in social media, bumping up against something that might be innovative, and they need new ideas and they're looking for new things.
Yeah, yeah, and a
Yeah.
lot of times you don't know what you don't know. So as the expert, you're selling a solution they need, but you have to help them understand what to look for. How do I differentiate, GoEpps from Fuoco? How do I know the difference?
Mhm.
I run into that all the time. I don't know about you. People looking for a marketing partner, and if they looked at GoEpps and they looked at Fuoco, there'd be two totally different things. But a lot of buyers
Yeah.
don't know the difference. And so if you can help buyers understand the difference and understand how to know how to buy, that is thought leadership.
Huh. Yeah. I think, yeah. And I think, just my 2 cents, but I think the way it's kind of changed some is more of, you have to be like at the party. You have to be in the community. So not just putting out content, but I would say community is a component of it.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
being at the events, I don't know. I see you and other folks who I follow are sort of, they're just out there. They're just present. And so when those people are always present, like I go to this event or I see, who's going to be attending this thing or who's, got out a new podcast episode on this, there's just a presence, sometimes even a physical presence.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of thought leadership now is like
It's so
showing
true.
up.
It's
Yeah.
so true because you think just because I mean, I don't know if you've run into this. I certainly have. I'm like, I run into friends of mine and they're like, now, when I say friends, not like people that I'm seeing all the time, but that like, I feel like I have an idea of what they're doing. And I feel like I thought they probably had an idea of what I'm doing. But I went to this, I used to work in the governor's office and Governor Sundquist, and he passed away. And there was a really nice funeral service for him last week. And I went, so I ran into a lot of people I hadn't really seen in a long time. And they're like, what are you doing now? And I'm like, gosh, I probably need to be out there more, and like making sure people know, well, I have this healthcare B2B marketing agency. So, sometimes you think you're out there, but you got to be out there all the time. And that's one thing I wanted to say about the thought leadership. Like it is not an overnight thing. And once you have, like, it takes a while to get it, right? And once you have it, you want to keep it, and you want to continue to invest and maintain that presence in people's mind and that presence in the market. And I equate it, it's a lot like exercising, it takes a long time to get into shape and seemingly like overnight to get out of shape. So I think you got to always be flexing that muscle.
Spoken like a true long distance athlete, which you are.
Not right now. Got to get back on the bike.
Yeah. All right. Same here. Well, good. Okay. Last question. This is a wrap up fun question. So, okay. Kriste, what is your favorite sea creature and why?
Okay. Listen.
We're partial here at GoEpps to the narwhal.
I saw that.
But yeah.
Well, when I'm about to tell you my answer, so I had to Google, is a narwhal a whale? Because my favorite sea creature is the whale. And I found out that narwhal is, in the whale family. But I think it's partly because, they're my favorite because they're these mammals living underwater, which is just fascinating to me. And the other reason, well, I have several reasons, if you will humor me, but I've also had the opportunity to see whales in person in the wild, like during whale season in Hawaii a few times. And it's just such a remarkable thing, right? Wow. It's something that's so amazing. If you ever have the opportunity, go see whales during whale season, wherever, whatever coast that may be. But I also just think their size is mind boggling, and the fact that they're so massive, but at the same time, they're so gentle. I'm also fascinated with the way that they communicate with each other. I'm a communicator, but they have their own language. And, humans are studying, this like whale communication. And then I would say lastly, it's just really awe-inspiring. And I guess whales just always make me think of like how big the world and the earth and the universe are and what a small, small part of it that I am. And I think for me, I was thinking about the answer to this question, and I'm like, it just kind of puts things into perspective in that it drives home my belief in a higher power, right? And this force out there that's just so much bigger than any one person or country or planet or maybe even universe. So there, the whale, he's big, big, big thoughts.
I love it. That's a great Zen moment to close on. So yeah, Kriste, thank you so much. So for everybody listening, Kriste Goad, healthcare, B2B marketing. She's someone to talk to, strategy, solutions, branding, voice, figuring out the big picture things and starting fires together, starting a fire. So Kriste, thank you so good to see you. So good to spend time with you. Thanks for being on the Narwhal Pod, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. This has been so much fun.
Thank you.